issues from that perspective. But now we're making the final turn, and we're coming into the home stretch. And this whole race, I'll tell you something about races. It doesn't matter who comes out of the box, and it doesn't matter who's leading in the back stretch, and it really doesn't matter who's leading on the turn. The only thing that counts is who's leading at the finish line. And we are coming down to the finish line. And there are some lessons from SOS in Michigan that were very valuable up on this board. Because as much as I like the people who are on the Supreme Court today, and I have to tell you, we lost a friend when Thomas Moyer passed away 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. And I'm not sure his replacement is as positive thinking on this issue as I certainly would like to see. But there are 6 other judges still on that court. And judges, even the best of judges who apply the law, are still human beings. And as human beings, there are many things that influence us in our decision-making process. And so now we're coming down to the final stretch. And what do you and I need, what does the Lakefront group need to get this thing so that we're still the horse at the finish line? Well, number one, we need oats for the horse. So we need the money. We need the money to keep the lawyers fed, all right? Because we need them to finish this job. I don't like telling you that, and I hope when the smoke clears here, you'll be able to go back to court, back to common pleas court, and ask for some of your legal fees back from the state of Ohio. And I believe they owe you those legal fees, especially after they wasted a year and ran you around federal court for that stupid pleading. So that day hopefully is on the horizon. But we need to have that horse fed, those lawyers fed, to get to the finish line. We need the amicuses to help us get there. We need you doing that public opinion influence that you put on the board so well for us. Because those judges read the newspapers. That letter wasn't sent to the Sandusky Journal or whatever heck paper just for the heck of it. They're trying to influence the judges with this kind of stuff. So you need to send a letter to the editor every once in a while, especially if you're in the areas of any of our judges, pointing out how property rights are important. You need to remember the following. Justice O'Connor wrote the Norwood decision that Maurice was talking about. That case where in Cincinnati they were going to take away some people's properties to help the developer. And in Justice O'Connor's decision, she said, private property rights are a fundamental right that predate government. I've told Tony, I've told Vince, I've told Greg, if that's not the first sentence of your brief in the Supreme Court, I'm going home, okay? The first sentence has to be, as Justice O'Connor said in Norwood, private property rights are a fundamental right. That means they come not from government, but they come from nature and God, fundamental. And they predate government. That's what she said. And we need to remind her of that. And we need to remind her how important that private property right is. I'm going to be very political for you. Maureen O'Connor is up for election this year to be the Chief Justice. Judy Lanziger is up for election this year, re-election this year. She has an opponent. Those people, if there's a fundraiser in a neighborhood near you, you need to put on your shirt, your Lakefront shirt, and you need to go there and be seen, and you need to be seen there in groups, and they need to understand that the Lakefront property, the Ohio Lakefront group, is an organized and very important group that can affect futures of people who have to run for office. You need to make the push so they understand that. I was the sponsor of the residency bill. It allows policemen and firemen to live wherever they want, not in the city where they have to live. That bill won in the lower court, lost in the Court of Appeals most of the places, so went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court ruled in favor of my bill. The firemen and the policemen were at every fundraiser for every person running for the Supreme Court during that whole period of time. Can you walk up and say to them, hey, I need you to rule in favor of the Lakefront group? No. But can you show up there and let them know that you're a Lakefront group member who showed up at that fundraiser? Absolutely. And so you need to do that. I mean, this is the finish. This is the stretch. We're running for the finish line. And we need to get across the fact that this is real people, real fundamental property rights that are being affected, because believe me, the folks on the other side are going to do their best to get their point across. You're going to have the environmental folks. You've got, I'm a sportsman, I like to hunt, I like to fish, but some of these organizations have been taken over by folks who I believe are misusing those organizations for their own agendas, and their agendas are really, frankly, very liberal agendas and environmental agendas. But they're going to be out there doing their best to influence the court in the proper way. And you need to do your best to get there. So you need to get the message out. You need to help get your lawyers to the finish line. But I'm going to tell you the last thing, because I was there for the argument of Horny versus Norwood. And by the way, like in Michigan, I predicted you would not lose, and you lost. In the Norwood case, I predicted that Mr. Horny was going to lose, and he won. But the thing that was so amazing about that argument is the courtroom, the Supreme Court courtroom was packed. Packed by property rights advocates who were on the Horny side of the case, wearing their shirts and making it clear to the Supreme Court that there was a whole lot of people interested in that case and the rights that were going to be vindicated in that case. There is going to come a day, folks, when you're all going to get on that bus one more time, and you're going to fill this room and another room full of people, and we're going to fill as many buses as possible, and the day of oral argument in the Merrill Taft ODNR case, you have to be there. You got to be there with your shirts on. You got to be there in mass. You got to be there early so that none of the environmentalists can fit in the room. And we need to fill the room one more time. So we're in the back stretch. I thank you for staying in the race as long as you have, but you can't quit now. You got to stick with the Lakefront group to the finish line. You got to help your lawyers get to the finish line. You got to help us spread the message, because this is a fundamental right, folks. This is about the Vermilion River. I mean, they told us when they dragged you to federal court, in one of their briefs, they snuck it in, that this isn't just about walking along the lakefront. This is walking along the rivers and telling farmers they can't plant in the floodplain, and telling marinas you can't be doing business along these lakes and along these rivers, because this is about what Maurice said, this fundamental point. Do we own our land, or are we essentially just holding it during a point in history for the common good and the public trust? My grandparents came to this country from Europe for one reason and one reason only. They were tenant farmers in Poland, but they were allowed to own dirt in the United States. And that has stuck with me since I was a young kid and will go to my grave. We're going to stand up for property rights. You're going to be standing there with me. I really appreciate everything you've done. And by the way, if any of you vote for Richard Cordroy, after he made the stupid statements that he's made about walking along the beach, you're going to have to answer to me on November 3rd. Thank you all very much.